Today's guest is Alexandra Batista Rodriguez, founder and director of STEPS Learning Center in Orlando, Florida, a specialized K-8 microschool for neurodiverse learners with moderate to significant needs. STEPS Learning Center takes a non-traditional, student-centered approach that integrates social emotional learning with tailored, progress-based instruction and comprehensive independent living skills. It serves a variety of families through various flexible programs, including full-time or hybrid tutoring and asynchronous curriculum design for homebound homeschoolers, all customized to meet the diverse needs of the neurodiverse community. Alexandra Batista Rodriguez, welcome to the Liberated podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today and giving me the opportunity to talk with you a little bit about Steps Learning Center.
I'm so glad that you're here. We had the chance to meet briefly recently in Atlanta at the annual National Hybrid Schools Project conference that brings together microschool and hybrid school founders from across the country. And I was thrilled to be able to have a chance to have you on the podcast today to tell us about your founder journey, as well as sort of the unique educational approach you have in your microschool. So let's start back in the beginning, if we could, Alexandra, with kind of your background. What made you interested in teaching and education to begin with? Let's start with the early days of your career.
Yeah, well, I started very, very early because around 6 years old, I had a play in school and I had to play a teacher. And I was like, oh, yeah, I want to be a teacher, definitely. And then when I was in my teens, I went to an event of a nonprofit in Puerto Rico that is called SER, so SER, for their initials in Spanish, and they work with kids with different disabilities like muscular dystrophy, and they have a broad um, plethora of services and how they support families. So when I went to this event, um, and I just fell in love with the kids, the pure love. Like they were all so happy just to for me to be there, and they didn't know me, and they would say hi. Like so, I just fell in love with the energy, and I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to dedicate my life to kids with special needs, that need that extra support. So when I graduated high school back in 2010, um, I already knew what I wanted to do. So I did a double degree, a double bachelor's degree in elementary education and special education. And that covers K to 12. So when I finished college, or while I was in college, I worked in different programs like there was a tutoring program that was called Upward Bound that worked with kids in schools that were in like high risk areas. So we will give them tutoring, and the goal was to help them pass the college board. Um,
And this
and
was
for
all in Puerto Rico. Is
this
that
was
right,
all in Puerto
Alexandra?
Rico.
It's where you were
Yes,
born and raised and where you started
right.
kind of your early career in
Right. I
teaching.
should have started with that. Yes, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. So all this happened in my hometown in Ponce. Um, and then the school was very close. It was not in Ponce, it was in another town called Juana Diaz. So I worked with them for about a year. Then I did my student teaching and a school that worked with kids with special needs also in Ponce. And when I finished my student teaching, I continued as a paraprofessional until I graduated, and then I worked at a private school for a year. After that, I was pregnant with my first child, so I decided to stay home. So I started teaching kids virtually. I was teaching English to kids that lived in China and Korea. Um, so that was what I was doing. And then in 2017, Hurricane Maria happened. By then, I was pregnant with my second child. So we had to make the decision to move to Orlando. We have family here. So I continued working online for about a year. And then from there, I looked for work, and I worked at two different charter schools that were specialized in kids with autism. So for about 6 years, I worked in these schools, and that's where I got my fire lit in me to do what I am doing now and founding Steps Learning Center.
Wow. So what was it that lit that fire in the charter sector? Of course, charter schools, again, are public schools that are privately run, typically by nonprofit organizations. What was it about that experience that kind of set you on this larger path?
Yes, so in the traditional system, public schools and charter schools, usually they use the same system as ESC uses, which here in Florida is access points. That's the curriculum the students do. So it's kind of like a watered down version of the grade level standards. And then they pair that with the student's IB. And I worked where I worked. I had a third and fourth grade, and then they continued to be my fourth and fifth grade. Um, and my students all were in a self-contained classroom. So that means that when they graduate out of school, they will get a high school completion certificate, not a diploma. So if they wanted to continue and do college or a technical program or anything like that, they would have to either do FSA or well, back then it's the FSA. I think if they changed the name now. But the standardized testing, they had to go through it, or they had to do the GED program. Um, and a lot of our kids were really had a whole another set of needs that were not necessarily academic. And I love that you had a podcast recently about who needs college and who doesn't. And I was like, yes, exactly. Because for a lot of our kids, they need other skills like in the independent living, the social emotional, the communication, the self-care, because they have unique abilities and areas of challenge where they have to navigate the world completely different than neurotypicals do. So when I was in the system, they use the IEP. So the main issue that I had with the IEP is that it expires every year, and you're not allowed to repeat goals. At least I wasn't allowed to repeat goals. So let's say one of the goals for the student was that they had to trace independently, right? And the student still needs hand over hand to trace. You had to move on. The next goal was for the student to write independently. And it's like, if they didn't learn to trace, how are they going to write? So what it just becomes, it's a whole pile of documents saying everything that the child can't do, but you can't really do anything about it because you are not completely allowed to work on it. And then the other
That doesn't
part, or
make any sense,
I
Alexandra.
know, right? It doesn't. So you see how my fire started getting
Yeah.
lit because then I would bring things to the table like, oh, okay, so I can do a potty training goal with this student, and it will be like, no, because it's not academic, and I'm like, okay. So that was the other part of it. The problem is
Hmm.
that it is very academically focused. How we can get these student scores as close as the regular students or the neurotypical students. And that makes zero sense for a lot of our students because academics, they will come. All of them can learn their letters or they can communicate in some type of way. They can read, maybe they can verbally read, and we can reach those skills. But we have to make sure that the student is feeling safe, that the student is feeling confident, that the student has a way to say or tell us or communicate, this hurts, I need this, I want this, I need a break. And students are not given that opportunity because their goals in their IEP have to match what they're supposed to be doing in their grade level.
Hmm.
So if a third grader is they're now doing division and multiplication, it doesn't matter if the child doesn't know yet quantities, you still have to expose them to multiplication and all that. So it kind of, and then you might see kids that are just failing everything. You might see kids that have all A's, and then it's just not functional. They're not given the opportunity to work on the things they need. So it ended up being kids graduating at 21 years old from 12th grade without having a basic communication style. It doesn't have to be verbalizing a device, using pecs, using signs. No communication, no self-care skills, things as simple as potty training. They were never potty trained, and now you're working with
Mm.
a 21-year-old woman or a 21-year-old man. So it just becomes a situation where just um they are very propense to like abuse and neglect because they
Mm.
are now adults that do not have basic self-care or management skills.
So you're in the charter sector, you're encountering the fact that even though individualized education plans are supposed to be individualized, and tailored to the needs of each individual child, the reality is there's still these pressures from kind of a one size fits all curriculum model, that's being placed on neurodiverse students, special education students, in ways that you find are not helpful and are not doing a service to the learners that you're working with. So, what happened next for you?
So yeah, so I decided to leave school. Like I first worked, most of my experience was in that elementary school. And then after I finished with my kids that I kind of just sent them off to middle school, I was done. And especially because I got in trouble because I was potty training a child and I was told, oh, you are not acting in the best interest because you're not following IEP goals. So I'm like, okay, so my I was potty training that child because I wanted him to go to a specific school where I knew he could be successful. They had really good programs. They had job training and all these things that I knew this student could be successful, but their only requirement was that they had to be potty trained. And this 11-year-old um, was not potty trained. And I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing this year. We're getting you potty trained. And then I was stopped. And I got a lot of pushback when I wanted to put it in their IEP. And I was not happy. So that did it for me. I was like, definitely not. This is not what I wanted to do. So I kind of spiraled there because I'm like, okay, this is what I wanted to do all my life. What am I gonna do?
And when
So then
was this, Alexandra? Like what time frame are we at this
this
point?
was around 2021.
Okay. So
Um,
kind of post COVID, you kind of dealt with that
yes,
whole disruption. Now it's 2021. You're finally at your breaking point of this isn't working for kids and for me. There's got to be something else. Okay, so then what
right.
happened?
And then COVID, when COVID happened, 2020, um, I something that I did when we all went, virtual. Um, I knew that for my kids was not functional to be online or getting online. So I prepared kit boxes with
Mm,
different activities, guidance on how to work with it with the students. And then I made like appointments with parents and I was like, here's your kit. Everything is in there. I put all the information online as well. So I kind of I left them equipped, and then they would email me about it. And the kids were doing progress. They were like, oh, so and so is doing this, and now they're doing that. And I was thinking like exactly because that's the point. It has to be functional. It has to be because what I did is I'm going to give you all what your child needs to be working on. Because for now, that's what we're going to focus on. And the students started to communicate more at home and things like that. So
mm,
after that, I went back to work online. This time I worked with a company that would, um, because of the teacher shortages that are happening, there are some schools that what they are doing there, they were adopting having an online teacher teach the class. And then the kids were at their homes or they were in a classroom. Um, so that's what I was doing. I was teaching online, but it was live teaching. While I was doing that, I learned about Florida being an ESA state. I had no idea what that meant. And it was because a family friend told me, like, oh, yeah, my daughter has a tutor, and I pay the tutor with this scholarship. And back then it was the Gardiner scholarship. And I'm like, oh. And she's like, yeah, all you need is a teacher certification to get approved. And I'm like, oh. So I started to learn about it. And then I learned even more that as a certified teacher, I could have a lot of kids. Like I could have up to 25 students per certified teacher as long as it was in a commercial building. And that was it. In April, I registered the business, and then April 2022 and in August 2022 we opened our doors for the first time as a homeschool support program first.
Mm. Ah, just amazing. Okay, so much there. I want to back up just a bit and emphasize the school choice programs that you mentioned. Florida has been a longtime leader in implementing school choice programs that enable a portion of education funding to follow students to their preferred educational environment. You mentioned the Gardner Scholarship. That was one of these school choice programs geared towards students with special needs. There were other education savings account programs and scholarship programs focused around learners, low income students, and other types of learners. And in 2023, Florida implemented universal school choice eligibility, enabling every K-12 student in the state to have access to some funding to use either at a private school, a microschool, a tutoring center like yours, various types of homeschooling collaboratives, and kind of a la carte classes for homeschoolers. So, one of the leaders for a long time in school choice, and now Florida being one of the 16 states that has universal school choice. So you opened just before the universal aspect of choice came about. Tell us a little bit about your kind of pre-launch experience. You said you opened in the spring of 2022. What were some of the steps that you took to get started, kind of before leading up to your launch, and then we'll talk more specifically about what that launch was like in those initial few months.
Sure. So, I started the I registered the LLC in April 2022. So from there, I started working on learning what was needed to have a tutoring center.
Yeah.
Um, and when back then there was like still a little bit of a gray area on that sense, meaning that there was not like a clear definition of
Yeah.
what counted as a tutoring center or what were the requirements, things like that. You just had to be a certified teacher. And then um, once I decided to do it, I basically started looking for information. How do you do this? So I came across different things and I signed up for like small business webinars and I signed up for I remember Microschool Florida, it just kind of popped up.
Yes,
And
microschoolflorida.com, a great resource for families and
yes,
founders. Yep.
yes. And then I found the National Microschooling Center. Those were
Yes.
the two things that popped up, and through them, I remember getting this email about the KaiPod Catalyst, and
Yes.
I put it in the back burner. I continued. The first step I did was okay. I got approved as a tutor. I got through the whole process, uploaded my certifications, did everything I needed to do. So I was already an approved provider. Next step was to find a location. I know I jumped a lot of steps. That's why the catalyst was very helpful because I was like, I have an idea, I have the approval, I need a place. So I started looking, and then we started in a location in a strip mall, that we outgrew within the first 2 years, um, and then while I was finalizing the contracts and all that, the day before applications were due for the catalyst, I submitted it. And the next day, I think, or like two in a very short, I got a response um to do the interview. And
Hmm.
I was so nervous because this was the first time I was talking to anyone about what I had in my head, besides, of course, my husband that has helped me through the whole thing. At that
Yeah.
moment, he's immersion marine. At that moment, he was on a boat. And I'm on the phone, like, yeah, I'm doing my own center. I'm going to open up a business. And he's like,
Wow.
okay, let's do this. Um, So he's been, a great help since the beginning. And my mom also helped me like set it up because I had two kids.
Mm,
I know by then I have three already because in 2021 I have my daughter.
mm,
Um, so I just got the place, started to look for the furniture, and I got in the Tide Pod Catalyst. And they were kind of like, we got like, this is going to happen. You're going to make it happen with or without us. You're going to make it
yeah.
happen. And we think that what we're offering, like, and I'm like, it's what I need. Exactly. Because I needed all that, like the paperwork, the forms, the legalities, the city things, everything. Because all I had in my mind was like, I need a place that is a commercial building, and that's that. And then there were a couple of things that came up with the city, with them not knowing what we were like. Are you a daycare? Like, do you have to be certified as a daycare? So I use all these great resources that are out there. Like, yes, every kid. Um, I've been bothering everybody that offers services, and that at that point, so I was able to get the information I needed. And in 2023, August 2023, we launched our microschool.
So you
So
opened with students in 2023.
yes, in 2022, I opened with students. We
As
had about 8 students by December. We had reached 13 by May.
okay. But that was just a
Um,
tutoring. Was that like
but it
tutoring
was
for
just tutoring.
homeschoolers?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it was a
So
10 to 2 schedule. They
mhm.
would bring their own curriculum.
Okay.
Because I just, I wanted to start learning and all that. And while this is operating and already open, I'm doing the catalyst. So I
Yes.
am building the micro school program for the following year.
And is the micro school then sort of a recognized private school, or are you still running as a tutoring center?
Yes, we are still running as a tutoring center, and
Okay.
we'll probably stay like that for as long as regulations allow.
Yeah. So what changed? I mean, I guess why move from a sort of this tutoring resource center model, which a lot of founders find attractive, to a more of an established micro school a year later? It sounds like you were already attracting more families, going from 8 to 13 within a matter of a few months. What made you decide to sort of adopt that micro school structure specifically?
Yeah, so when I first started, that was my goal to
Mm,
do the micro school. Actually, my goal was to do a private school, and then upon learning about regulations, requirements, and all that, I'm like, no, we're staying a tutoring center. And that has a why, because
yeah, tell us about that because some people might
yeah,
say, I hear this a lot from people just curious about the why not just
yes,
become a regular private school?
the freedom, the
Yes.
freedom that you get. Because with homeschoolers, at least here in Florida, there are different ways that a homeschooler can basically certify that they finished their school year. And some of the ways is with state approved assessment tools like iReady or iExcel. The student can um, apply to do the standardized testing, that the student, the state standardized testing, um, or they can do a binder. So you can compile all the students' work in a binder and get a certified teacher to look through it and certify, yes, the student has completed the school year at the best of their abilities. Um, and then at the end of their school, they will still get the high school completion diploma that they will get in the ESC program in the traditional school. Now, if the student has the ability to continue on because they've been doing their iReady, their iExcel, they can get their high school diploma. If the student wants to go even further and do a GED program, or they want to do the state testing to go to college, they can do it too. So it's the freedom of teaching our kids what they need to learn without having to fit the one size fit all model that we're used to. So that's why
Even
we
in a
want to stay a
private
tutoring
school.
center.
Yeah, even you
Even
even
in a
saw
private
that
school,
one size
yes,
fits all in the private, traditional private school model
correct.
too. Yeah.
Yes,
And of course, again, in Florida, because the state has such robust school choice policies, including additional funding for students with special needs, the families that you're serving, the students that you're serving are able to attend your program tuition free, almost tuition free? I guess how does
Yeah.
that work at the micro school?
Right now, 100% of our students are attending basically tuition free because through the scholarship, they're able to pay for services. 60% of our students are in a full-time enrollment, 40% are in a part-time enrollment.
Okay.
Um, right now, we are at 15 kids,
15. Okay.
15 students. Our goal is to have 25. And then throughout the year, some have been started part-time, then changed to be full-time. Some started full-time, and then because of therapies and other things that they need, we're able to provide that flexibility of what your child needs.
Right.
And when we started the first year, um, it was basically part-time tutoring. So I got kids with all kinds of abilities, which is great. Like I always say, Steps Learning Center, it's open to any child that needs an alternative way to learn, a way that fits them and not them try to fit a system.
Hmm.
Um, so it is an open kind of an open invitation, but our population is usually or having moderate to significant needs. And when we say moderate needs, it's basically children that need communication that benefit from therapies because they might have some physical limitations or maybe their communication speech limitations, maybe they are not communicating verbally, so there are different needs, different things that might make a child not be successful in a traditional system. Um, and then our kids with significant needs, for example, might be kids that attend with an RBT, which is a behavior therapist, that's with them all day.
Hmm.
So that's another thing that we're able to do where we're able to collaborate with
Nice.
providers. And when the family gets here, is like, do you already have a provider? They do in school, they can come in, no problem. You don't have a provider? We have a couple different ones that already work with us. We can refer you to what insurance do you have or how do you want to do it. So, um, and we're building up on that because we want it. We believe that therapy should be part of the child's everyday. Because if a child is working on eating and using utensils to eat, you can't just teach that in 15 minutes, 30 minutes,
Yeah.
or 45 minutes. You have to be there when this child is having snacks or having lunch, or you have to help the child through it. So that's what we do basically here at Steps.
And what is it like for you now, Alexandra, as an entrepreneur? What has that experience been like, seeing the growth and maturity of Steps Learning Center over the past couple of years? Tell us some of your reflections on that.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been a learning journey to me. Definitely. I was just a teacher. And I tell that to everybody. I mean, I'm like, I was just a teacher. Like, I maybe sold some hairpins in like second grade or something like that. And that was as far as my business knowledge went. Um, so I had to learn. I had to completely learn and kind of also learn like this is a business too because although we are a for-profit with a social mission, so because we have the tools, the state has a great program that gives us the tools for families to have access. We just have to provide the services. So it's been for me a learning journey on how to be a business, um, and seeing how the program has grown, how we have a great team of teachers. Our independent living class, the teacher that leads it, she's an occupational therapist. The teacher that does our social emotional learning has a degree in child psychology and she's continuing to study. So we have people that are learning about what they're teaching or that they know about what they're teaching. And we are able to provide that specialized education. Our academics teacher, she is certified in ESE and Montessori. So she
Hmm.
kind of integrates those materials as far as she can. She's like, this is Montessori 2.0 because for some of our kids, it does need a lot more guidance than it usually needs in the Montessori approach. But once they get it and they like it and they want to do it.
Yeah, so maybe let's double click on that a bit because I know you position Steps Learning Center as a non-traditional student-centered microschool for neurodiverse learners and those with significant special needs. So what does that sort of non-traditional student-centered piece look like? Obviously, Montessori we know is very learner-centered, but tell us a little bit more about your approach.
Yes, so we have four main areas. The students do their academics, and then we do it in a way where it's tailored to the child's learning ability. We use the screen evaluation to see where the child is at.
Mm.
We have some students that are in the developmental level where they are working on developmental gaps, on closing some motor skills, things, communication, self-management, and all those skills first. We always implement academics, but it's not the main focus. Of course, they learn through play, they learn through songs, they learn through floor time.
Mm.
So we are just making it part of their natural environment for them to learn those skills. Then we have our developmental academic students where they still need to work on some developmental skills, usually social emotional or self-management skills, coping skills, learning how to use their communication because some of them can communicate, but when they are in a high stress, it's not easy for them to get those skills out. So we're still working on that, but they are ready for academics. They're learning their numbers, they're learning to read. Um, and then we use homeschool curriculum. So each child is working at their own level. And we use printed curriculums, we use hands on, and then we also offer the digital tool piece. So the students have different ways to show us what they need. And then we have our academic group. Our academic group, they still need help with functional skills, executive functioning skills. They need independent living. They need communication, more like a social communication, um, and community-based learning. So, and they are working close to grade level or at grade level. Some of them above grade level. So we're able to tailor into those, or at least divide them into those three different learning abilities. And once they're in each class, they are working at their level. So if a child needs to work on their cutting, they're cutting. But then if a child is able to do it independently, they just have a visual with the instructions and you go ahead. So we're able to tailor it. We have small groups, so we don't have more than 8 students. And then there's always a teacher in the classroom with the 8 students. And some of those students have that one-on-one. So sometimes we have where we have kind of like an inverted ratio. We have a 10 to 6 because we have a bunch of adults. We have 10 adults and 6 kids. So we're able to tailor to what each child needs. And then they do independent living. So independent living, it's basically a subject area. And each there they work on fine and gross motor skills that they need for the academics, but they also work on self-care. They work on brushing teeth, washing hands, following a schedule, working with timers, all those other skills that are needed for them to be successful. And then they also do social emotional learning. In the social emotional learning class, they learn about emotions. How do you feel in different situations? How to deal with those emotions? What can you do? They are all natural. Like it's okay if you feel angry. It's okay if you feel mad. We all feel frustrated sometimes. It's fine. It's basically the actions that you do that matter. So that's the main focus. We use a curriculum called the Little Spot Off, and it is a great resource. It's by Diane Albert, and it has like manipulatives with the emotions where each emotion is like a little emoji. So they have like an actual thing to hold, and it provides also like a bunch of different multi-sensory learning experiences within the curriculum, and we're able to adapt it to all of our students' learning abilities. Um, and then we do enrichment where the students have gone to a 7-Eleven we have very nearby. We just walked to it. Students got they got $5 and they got to buy themselves a treat. We did a trick or treat walk with all like the businesses around the area. They gave them candy. I kind of overdid it. We had to stop like 15 times. The kids were like, oh, we're tired. So we're able to also integrate that. We're soon doing a Publix field trip because we have a Publix very nearby too. So we're able to do many different things during those enrichments. Gardening. They are now doing the life cycle of animals. So they are going to be caring for caterpillars or until they become butterflies and they can let them fly away. So we're able to do that. And then we have students that have therapists that come in during the day to work with them, speech, OT. We have the students that receive ABA therapy, that their therapist is here with them all day or for half of the day, depending on what their need is. And as part of the enrichments, we started not long ago an ASL class. So the students are also learning American Sign Language, and we're hoping to keep integrating these therapeutic approaches during the whole day. Next, we are currently training our staff in communication, in AAC, communication modeling, and using communication boards, because we also want to implement that in a more functional way for next school year. So we keep learning, we keep improving every time.
Yeah. It really seems like STEPS Learning Center programs like it are transforming special education in particular. Of course, we've long had special education programs and IEP programs, individualized education plans within traditional public schools. There's also been traditional private schools or therapeutic schools for students with moderate to significant special needs. But there's something about the microschooling movement in particular that seems especially promising. I wonder, what your thoughts are on sort of the future of education, but especially the future of special education given the momentum around microschools and programs like yours?
Well, I'm hoping we are able to show the difference when you
Mhm.
take a progress-based approach. Mainly the main issue is that our kids do not work with due dates or timelines. They are very unique in their journey. You can see a child that can master a skill in 2 or 3 days, but the next skill takes up months. And that's fine. Like something that we have to understand also is that neurodiverse children, they learn differently. But they can learn. It's not a disability, it's a unique ability, it's a different ability. So it's not that they can't learn, it's just that they can't learn it the way you're teaching it,
Mm-hmm.
basically. So we have to find different ways because what works for one child can be a trigger for another one. So we have to have the space to actually make it individualized. If you're still going through something that is standardized and you're just kind of working with it, it's not the approach. It's the progress-based approach that can allow that. And you need small groups. Although the schools have the resources to do something similar, they just have to switch the mindset of standardized scores to progress based, which is how we track progress. Our students are doing ABLES and AFLs, which is assessments for functional life skills, and it has different protocols. And then within each of these protocols, there are areas, the VV map too. We're learning about the VV map. We're thinking about introducing the VV map as well, because we need a way to look at the whole child. We can't just focus on academics. Academics is just 3 parts of an 11-part assessment. You have your pre-academics or pre-skills, you have your common core academics, and then you have your applied academics. And that's it. And then you have your self-care, your self-management, social emotional, dressing, eating, social skills, classroom mechanics. You have all these other areas because you have to look at the whole child. And like I said, each child, to make it truly individualized, it has to be the success is measured with the student. It's individual progress was successful. You have all these milestones and you met them. This is awesome. Not an age because you're this age, you should do this, or because you're in this grade level, you should do this. And even more when, as a teacher, I'm seeing that the standard that it's having, it's not. We're at the point where it's not developmentally appropriate.
Yeah.
Failing kids in kindergarten because they can't read, it's going against neurology, biology, developmental sciences. It's like
Common sense.
your at 5 your brain is not ready.
Right.
So it will be failed that you get fired from your job because your boss told you to fly and you're like, but I can't fly. Oh, then you're fired. That makes no sense, right? So we're doing that to our kids, that you need to read. Well, my brain is not ready to read. Oh, then you failed.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
baffling. So
But
imagine if
you're the solution. I mean, that's what's so promising about the microschooling movement and innovative education models more generally. You're showing how individualized learning can lead to incredible success for all kinds of learners, neurodiverse learners, neurotypical learners, for really everybody, because their needs are being met in a much more personalized, respectful way. And I'm sure, Alexander, that you have inspired many of my listeners and viewers. So, if they want to connect with you, learn more about Steps Learning Center, follow your progress as a founder, what is the best way for them to do that?
so you can follow us on our social media. We are on Instagram and Facebook as Steps Learning Center LLC. You can email us at contact us at stepslearn.com. Um, or you can also visit our website. You have all the information if you're an interested parent on our website, stepslearningcenterllc.com. On the top right corner, you'll see where it says get started. You click there. All we need is your name, your email, your phone number, and we will contact you to give you more information. And if you are a teacher thinking about doing it, opening a school. I don't have all the answers, but I've made great connections, great networking. Check out the Catalyst. There are so many things out there, and that's my hope. I want a buffet of micro schools, so parents are like, okay, my child is interested in science, and this one is in art. So let's just, I know the place to go. So it will be a dream, if that
So
happens.
great. Yeah, yeah. And so many great resources you mentioned, of course, Steps Learning Center being one of them, but you also mentioned microschoolflorida.com, a resource for families and founders run by Candace Leyenbauer in Florida, the National Microschooling Center run by Dawn and Ashley Soifer, who've been on the podcast a couple of times, and KaiPod Catalyst. The founder, Amr Kumar, has been on my podcast several times, as have founders like you who've participated in the Catalyst Accelerator program. So lots of resources, as you say, for aspiring founders, for entrepreneurial parents and teachers with a vision for what education could look like. So, Alexandra Batista Rodriguez, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast, and best wishes.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and best wishes to you too.